Hi everyone, my name is Bijan from Product Management Exercises, and today I'm here with Stefanos, who's a product manager in San Francisco, and he's one of the users of the site. So we're going to do a mock interview together on a product strategy question. But before we start, Stefanos, feel free to introduce yourself and say a few words.
Hey, yeah, my name is Stefanos. I've been in the Bay Area for 5 years now. I've been doing product for 7 years, really a span of running my own startup for some time, and then as well as working at bigger companies like Intuit. So really getting the full spectrum of PM.
That's awesome. Great to hear. So the question that we're going to do today is, how would you improve revenue for Uber?
Okay. Okay. Couple clarifying questions. Am I like the chief product officer of Uber, or am I specifically, Uber has many different entities within, like Uber Eats and like the main Uber, even Uber Freight is another company that they have, or
Yeah,
another focus area.
you can think of yourself as like the chief product officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
You directly basically report to the CEO.
cool. And then, is there a specific time frame that we want to improve revenue? Is this within the next year or two, or is this, just kind of in the next month?
Right. So this is more of a kind of like a longer term, like think about like 1 to 3 years of horizon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe something aggressive like we want to double revenue in the next 3 years at Uber.
Right. Right.
Okay, cool. And great, cool. So so what I'd like to do, I think the like format of how I like to tackle this is really like spend some time breaking down the problem further. Those clarifying questions definitely helps narrow where I'm at. And then once I've really broken down the problem, get to a even more narrowed focus, I'm going to come up with a bunch of solutions. And then sort of the second part is really to spend time evaluating which one of those solutions I'm going to move forward with, and then give you my final recommendation.
All right. That makes
Sound
sense.
good?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Cool. So if I first just, so in this like breakdown section, if I first just talk about Uber, so Uber is, I would say, the market leader in like consumer transportation. They have the cars that take you from place to place. That even within that, there's like Uber Pool. They've diversified into bikes and scooters, so yeah, they're just like a very like well-known market leader in A to B transportation on the consumer side.
Yeah.
Then they've even gotten into like transporting food with Uber Eats, and as well as um, transporting goods across the country with Uber Freight. And so they really have like, I would say, like a really narrowed focus around just transportation and logistics as a company. They're a public company, like quite mature, lots of money, and yeah, like competitors for them are like Lyft, and yeah, like some other global companies. Uber, as opposed to Lyft, is global. They have a lot of competitors within Southeast Asia and in China, et cetera. And so, yeah, so they've got a lot going on for them. But overall, I think their company's really focused on transportation and logistics. And yeah, I would say the core use case today of like Uber is like I open the app, I hail a car, and it comes, picks me up, and takes me to my destination within a city.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if I think about revenue overall, so that's kind of like my breakdown of what like Uber is and does today. Improving revenue, there's a few ways you can tackle improving revenue. One is by increasing price. So maybe increasing the price of a ride that they're hailing, or if we're focused on Uber Eats, maybe increasing the service fee for that. Another is the transaction volume, or transaction size rather, is how can we like at checkout get more and more things at your checkout transaction. And I think for that, that's like more specific to around Uber Eats. And then another strategy for improving revenue is increasing the number of transactions that are happening. So how many rides am I hailing in a month? Can we increase that number? And then finally, like just getting more customers on the platform. So that is kind of how overall you could improve revenue. If I'm just thinking about Uber and their situation right now, and I'm going to use like current times during COVID right now, Uber's core business is really hurting. No one is really, like everyone is sheltering in place and no one is really able to go and take rides at the moment. But Uber Eats is actually doing really well. There's not a lot in this current time frame that Uber itself could be doing. The like Uber ride hailing could be doing. Can't really increase price. Can't really do anything to get new customers in the door. It's just like a really big safety concern, and I think it's going to be a while until people have that comfort to be in a car and start hailing rides as they were before. And I also don't know too much about Uber Freight, so I think for this, I'd like to focus more on Uber Eats. It was doing well before COVID. It's doing exceptionally well now, and I think it kind of, with everything going on with COVID, I think it's accelerating more of where we'll be in the future as like a world, and just relying more and more on these online services to help provide things for us. So I'm going to focus on Uber Eats and then kind of walk through some of these revenue strategies, improving revenue strategies, to help kind of get us to our goal of doubling revenue in the next 3 years. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Cool. So if I could take a minute to just think about some solutions, and I will be right back with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. So I have 4 solutions I'm going to walk through. So in really, again, thinking about those levers that I have in improving revenue. So price, increasing transaction size, number of transactions that happen on the platform, and number of customers. First, on the price side, my first solution, number 1, is increasing the service fee that is being charged for Uber Eats. It's a simple solution. You just increase the price. But I'll kind of talk about more about how we're evaluating and breaking that down. But on the surface level, I think the price is already, for me as a consumer, pretty decent, or even a little bit high. I think it's about around $3 that I'm paying for the service fee, and I think they have the ability to increase that price technically right now, but I think it might actually push customers away from using the platform and maybe calling that restaurant directly, or sort of trying to avoid that fee. And I think there's possibly that there's more competition that might be able to come in and influence that price as well. So that's one option. Number 2 is really trying to find a way to increase the transaction size. So is there a way we could, design within the experience of Uber Eats to nudge people from, instead of just ordering your green curry and some noodles from a Thai restaurant, can we add more things to the cart in that experience to get us to actually getting people to increase the value of their cart and transaction. Number 3 is both actually number 3 and 4. I'll kind of lump together. They're a little bit different in where we'd go, but both are expansion opportunities. So I'm thinking of this as like getting us new customers, net new customers. So not necessarily just getting us new customers to Uber Eats, but these are expansion opportunities into groceries, into goods, like getting these drivers to go pick up things from Home Depot or Lowe's or 7-Eleven, where there are many of these like locations around your town or city, and Uber Eats has already like enabled the ability for cars to go pick up food from restaurants.
Mhm.
So I'd love to evaluate how we can expand into. So I'm actually going to call this like 3 solutions. So one, again, increase the service fee. Two, increase create a way within the design to actually nudge people to add more to their cart before checking out. And then 3, expansion opportunities. So I'm going to take a moment to go into my evaluation criteria, and then really deep dive into really the pros and cons of each of these solutions. All right. So actually, in going through my exercise of coming up with some evaluation criteria, and then also sort of mapping all my solutions to that evaluation criteria, I actually came up with one more solution. The fourth solution I'd like to add is actually tackling the lever around how can we get more transactions happening per month, let's say, within the Uber Eats ecosystem. And so for me, the one thing that I thought about was, okay, for me as a consumer, I'm going through this like process of like trying to order food. And that service fee, honestly, every time I go through that experience, really like kind of irks me. I go in, I'm excited about ordering some food. I see the price. It seems like I'm about to spend like $15. I feel pretty good about that. And then I go all the way to checkout. And then suddenly with like service fee, the tip, the tax, and everything, it's like suddenly like at $25. And it feels, I don't know, it just feels really rough for me. And if I want to like further engage with Uber Eats in the future, I'm probably going to be like questioning like whether I'm actually going to be using Uber Eats, or could I just like call the restaurant straight, like directly. So the fourth idea is really, could we eliminate this like service fee, but actually create a subscription model to Uber Eats? So maybe let's call it like $5 a month or $10 a month to Uber Eats, in order to give me unlimited like free service fees for my experience. Cool. So I have a little whiteboard. Can you see this? Is this backwards
Yeah,
for
I
you?
can see it pretty well. Yeah.
Is it backwards for you, or is this?
Yeah,
Because
no,
for
it's
me, it's
perfect. Yeah.
backwards. Okay, great. So I tried to go through. So my evaluation criteria. So this is life in COVID, where I have my own mini whiteboard.
Yeah.
Um, so my evaluation criteria, I would say like the standard ones, so like always have, are really like the opportunity size.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost. So I've got the opportunity size and cost for each one of the 4 solutions. And then I also like to check in and think about like, does this like solution really fit into the mission or ecosystem of the company? So for Uber, does this really fit into what their actually like core business is? And then finally, I like to think about the user experience. So are we adding more burden to the users by creating the solution, or are we actually, like for both, like in this situation, like the Uber user both encompasses, like the Uber Eats user is both the delivery driver, the restaurants themselves, as well as the consumer. And so are we actually adding more pain to one of those users, or or are we not? And then that's kind of what I'm trying to assess. So I've got my 4 evaluation criteria. So the first solution again is really just increasing the service fee. Simple solution. Really, like I would imagine that the opportunity size is pretty small. I don't think we could increase the service fee more than $1. Honestly, it's already feels pretty high. And in just thinking about how Uber operates in general, they are really like very good at determining price elasticity, and like and figuring out like what a user is actually willing to pay. They've done a really good job of like basically like managing supply and demand for the Uber marketplace itself. And so I think Uber in general has a really good understanding of what a user's willingness to pay is. This is kind of nice. It's like perfectly on one, the way I'm holding it. Cool. So then on cost, obviously very, very low. I would even call this a zero, almost like no cost. It's like just a DB change really. Yeah, and then that has to get sort of cascade through the UX. On mission and ecosystem, high, I don't think it's really, again, it's like a small change. So it's not really changing anything about their ecosystem or the mission. And then on the user experience, I call this a medium effect. If they increase the price, again, I think it's going to continue to maybe annoy users as they try and check out the end user. Yeah. So on the second solution was really how can we nudge users through the experience to add more items to their cart as they're checking out. A solution I was thinking about even within that was right now when you're checking out from a restaurant, you can really only order from one restaurant. And I'm wondering, could it be possible for the end user to be able to, if I want to order like tacos and Thai food, can I do that in one checkout experience? Mm-hmm. Because I have roommates and maybe somebody wants a different thing. And so instead of having us do place two orders or separately or together do two separate orders, could we actually just get us to just place one big order all together? And it actually streamlines that entire conversation I'm having with my housemates. And I think it could be a really great experience. I think the opportunity there is low-ish to medium. I think, it could be big, but I honestly don't think people still have budgets. People still have a certain amount of money that they're willing to spend. And even if you're combining, I don't think that if my roommate really wanted tacos, I think they're going to still buy tacos. I think we might see a 5 to 10% increase in transaction size overall. So I think that's a low opportunity. And if I keep going back to check in with our overall goal of doubling revenue, which is a really big move, I don't think it's enough of a needle mover as compared to that goal. The cost, again, I would say that this is low to medium. It is a user experience change, but I think actually what you'll see, and I actually need to make a little correction here. I'm going to make this high. Again, line with the mission, but finally on the user experience side, if I'm thinking about the driver's experience, if they have to now go to 2 different restaurants to go pick up your food, and maybe those aren't close by, they're now, instead of doing a A to B to C route, they're doing a B, C, D route, which actually just adds more time to their sort of route. And then they're probably still getting paid the exact same to make one delivery. And I just don't think that that's actually adding to the user experience overall to the ecosystem. Third is the expansion into groceries. It's high across the board, so I'll just talk about them here. So on the opportunity side, I think super high. I think Instacart's doing a really amazing job of this sector. But if Uber truly is the leader of consumer A to B logistics, I think they could really give Instacart a run for their money. And I think this is just a really huge opportunity. Uber already has the network. Uber already has the technology to do the routing. And I think it's just sort of just figuring out, is it possible? So the next piece of that is cost. I think it's a really high cost. I think if you think about the experience, it's quite different than picking up from a restaurant. The driver, so the cost of first of all, just operations, logistics, it's we now have to go sell to and figure out what grocery stores we're going to work with. So those are definitely a cost that we have to do. And then on top of that, there are costs within the like potentially this driver now needs to have a fridge, like a cooler to keep like groceries at a certain temperature, or like meat and eggs and milk. Um, and I think it's just like a big logistical like burden that we need to figure out a whole new process. And then on the mission, I say that that's like definitely still in line. I think it's still in line with the mission. Overall of just like being a logistics provider to consumers, of like A to B, and in the sense like adding an additional step. Um, but I think that like my biggest weariness is like really on the like user experience side for the drivers.
Yeah.
I think on the driver side, they now have to like not just go by a restaurant, pick up the food that's ready, and then go drop it off at your house. They have to go to the store, park the car, go shopping for 30 minutes to an hour for probably multiple orders that have been made for different users. Buy like go through the checkout experience, go back to the car, load the car efficiently to like keep things cold, and maybe they need to like mix multiple orders in a single cooler, and then go make deliveries for those groceries. So it's like a way more cumbersome experience. And
Yep.
my one question is, would the existing Uber drivers actually want to become like a grocery delivery person as well? Like I think
Right.
the Uber driver conversion to Uber Eats driver is already, I think, like small. I don't think that's a huge number. I would even bet that that's like maybe not more than 20% of a
Mm.
regular Uber driver wanting to become an Uber Eats delivery person as well. It's just
Yep.
you're handling food. It's just a different experience than just like picking up people. And this is like a third level of complexity for the driver where they have to like get out of their car and do a bunch of work, like additional work. And
Mm.
if Uber is not able to like convert their existing network over to becoming a grocery delivery person, then they're going to have to spend money and acquire those drivers separately, which I think is just like a huge burden and adds to the cost, and it also is it's just like not great for the overall ecosystem. So that one overall is just like great, huge opportunity, but also a lot of cost and structure. So I'm already actually going to just cross that one out. It's like a very complex thing, and although very interesting, I think financially right now Uber is not in the best position to be able to do that. They've, there's a lot of other things going on that they need to work on. And then my fourth solution was really around the subscription service. So can we add a subscription service to eliminate the fees for the service fee for Uber Eats experience? So on the opportunity, I think it's actually pretty high. I think overall subscription fees or subscription services are like a really great financial tool for generating revenue at a company.
Mm.
Obviously like Netflix, Spotify, etc. Like we are in a world where everything has become a like subscription service, maybe to a point, to a fault where like there is like some fatigue on it, but I think it's still a great opportunity. And Uber in general in their portfolio do not have a subscription model built in. On the cost, I think it's a like fairly low cost. I think there is some finance math that needs to be worked out behind the scenes, but beyond that, like engineering cost, design cost is actually pretty low in introducing this. It's really just how can we get people to take the bait and actually switch, and does it actually make financial sense to cover what we're already gaining from the service fee. Definitely aligned with the mission. It's not like a huge change from the like overall business. And then on the user experience side, I think it like I think it's a great change overall for the user. I think if I'm already willing to pay, $10 a month for a Spotify subscription and many of these other services, I'm already like pretty used to this concept. And I think it's not a big deal to say like, hey, like I want unlimited deliveries. I want to use Uber Eats as my primary tool for ordering food, especially during these times where I'm like, maybe over the next year, especially going to be in and out of like sheltering in place as we figure out what's going on in the world. And I think it'll just inherently train me if we can get these users in today and be hooked on Uber Eats is your like main provider for ordering food, well, like I think it's a huge win long term because it'll build that habit, and keep me for the long term. And in a lot of subscription services, like people don't always use the service, so there might be months that I don't actually buy anything from Uber Eats, but Uber is still collecting my $10-15 a month, whatever it may be, to like generate more revenue like on a consistent basis from their users. So if I were to pick today, I think the one I would definitely start off with is number 4, the subscription service. That for me feels like it has the like biggest impact today, in the short term, and then also can build habits for growing the user base into the future. But I still, in order to double revenue in the next 3 years, it's still a huge thing. And there's never going to be a silver bullet. I think you need to take this, like go at this with multiple ways. And so my like close second would actually be to really look at how can we expand into new opportunities. The one I went into depth was the grocery experience, but I think if we potentially expanded into picking up from 7-Eleven, where you don't have that same like, maybe somebody's like picking up like water and Gatorade and candy bars. You don't have that same like intense like grocery shopping experience. Like 7-Elevens are generally small. It's a much easier like fluid thing. So I think there are opportunities where we could expand the business into new like delivery opportunities outside of groceries and restaurants. And I feel like that would be what I'd want to do, let's say in year 2 of this like 3-year roadmap, is lay out the subscription service, be successful there, and then use that money to basically fuel research into what are the new expansion opportunities we could have. Yeah.
What are some of the trade-offs that you can think of related to your first idea, your basically preferred solution, basically the subscription model? What are some of the trade-offs that come to your mind?
Some trade-offs for the subscription model are, I would say that, one is that I kind of mentioned before, is there is definitely like a subscription fatigue happening in the market, in the like sort of like marketplace in general. People questioning, do I need to pay another $10 a month for something else? I think it's like TBD if that people actually want this for Uber. I think it's an interesting opportunity. I just don't know if people would actually take the bait, and I think that's like one thing. If we actually were to build this subscription model, I think determining the price is going to be really important, because I guess it's sort of like doing the math of, okay, if we were making $3 per transaction and a user on average is maybe doing like 2, let's say Uber Eats orders a month, then if we're going to charge $10, like people are going to do that math pretty easily and not take the bite. And then if we move that down to, let's say $5 a month, do we actually get, the users we need? So I think that like actually figuring out the price is going to be really important there. And then another trade-off, I don't know. I think those are the 2 that really come to mind. I don't know if there's any other huge trade-offs for rolling out a subscription fee. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I will give you some feedback. Anything else you want to add, or should I kind of start giving feedback?
Yeah, I'd love to jump into feedback now.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much. So I think from a structure perspective, you did a pretty good job, like initially, like asking good clarification questions that helped you narrow down the scope a little bit. For example, like saying like, how many years are we looking ahead? Like, are we thinking like really, really big ideas, like 5-10 years ahead? Or are we thinking like very small ideas or somewhere in between? I think you did a pretty good job of like describing what Uber is. I would have worded it a little bit different. You mentioned that it's basically transportation company that moves people around. I think I would have probably worded it as it's a transportation company that moves objects around from point A to point B.
Totally.
And today humans are like basically their number one use case. And now they started moving food around, and then maybe there will be other things over time. You did a pretty good job of like really describing what are the ways to increase revenue, and is it increasing number of users, is it increasing the spending per user, is it number of transactions. Then you from that point on, then you went into like talking about different ways to increase the revenue, and then you prioritize them with very, very meaningful criteria that makes sense, and then you came up with a recommendation. I think your ideas are also great. One thing that I would have done is I would have probably just selected a particular objective right at the beginning, and say something such as, there are different ways to increase revenue, but given that today we have a large number of user base, I'm just going to focus on increasing the average spending per user per month, and just kind of like really go down the path of like focusing on that. I think your approach is okay too. Like it's fine to like kind of have one idea for each of those, but I really like the idea of like kind of narrowing down the scope as much as possible, and then like brainstorming a bunch of ideas and then picking the one that really makes sense.
Totally. I even actually felt it as I was coming up with the ideas that like, I think, I felt like I was like trying to like squeeze too much out of this like framework that I had set up. And I think it would have definitely been easier to like narrow in and focus on one. And I like for a moment thought about it, and then I just kind of like continued going. Yeah. So, no, I like that. I like that for sure.
And given that we have like very limited time, it's always hard to kind of like think about everything ahead of time. I liked how you took a moment to list out your ideas, because one of the feedback that I have for some of the product managers that I sometimes practice with is taking a moment. It's actually a good thing. It shows that you're thoughtful, and it gives you a chance to come up with good ideas. And when you took a moment, you realized, hey, there's a big opportunity around increasing the spending, and you mentioned it. And that's okay. I think it was really good that you did that. When you talked about brainstorming, basically when you said you're going to focus on Uber Eats, I think that's a good idea, but I don't know if you had to focus on Uber Eats, because I said like you're the CPO and you're looking at it overall. Just a kind of my general approach would have been to say, I'm not going to necessarily focus in like one particular product area, just to keep my options open. I would have focused more on basically how I'm going to increase the revenue. But that I think that's just like a preference thing. On the subscription model, I think it's a good idea, and hopefully someday that will happen. It's a really much needed basically service in the market. I think one of the trade-offs to keep in mind is how that changes the user behavior and how that impacts the financials. In a sense that if today we're charging $5 per drive, and now we offer like a $30 subscription fee, and we don't charge $5 per drive, does that cause a situation where we get so many orders to the point where we're not making profit? And there are ways that you can address it from a product side. Like you can always adjust pricing, or you can have like bundles, like you can order this many times. Or you can say that, hey, the revenue that's generated from the restaurant side as the commission is going to be sufficient for Uber to basically generate enough profit to stay in business. But I would have highlighted that as like a potential area to like focus on. And maybe one way we would have known if this is important is at the beginning, if you asked, do I care about profitability as much as revenue or not, right?
That's a good point.
If you ask like, do you care about profitability? And I said, I don't, then all of a sudden you have so many more opportunities. And I think what you did was, and you explained that during the interview process, you kind of hinted at the fact that you're assuming that the profit margins will not change significantly. Like you said, reducing, changing the price that might affect other aspects of the business. Like, so I think you kind of hinted at that, but if you asked and I just said, profitability matters or doesn't matter, I think it would have been really helpful for you when you're like thinking about the ideas that you're coming up with. Other than that, I think overall the structure was good. Like you came up with meaningful ideas. The subscription model is a great idea. It has a lot of potential. It definitely changes people's behavior and creates a desire for them to order with Uber Eats more than anything else, any other platforms out there. And thanks again for taking the time and doing this mock interview. Again, my name is Bijan from Product Management Exercises. For those of you that are watching, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit us at productmanagementexercises.com. It allows you to prepare for your PM job interviews at any of the tech companies around the world. Anything else?
No, thank you. This is super helpful. I think, yeah, just even going through these exercises is just live, and it just really like builds a good muscle for how to, I think for me, it's like how to take everything that's going on in your head and like really like make it concise and add some structure so that the interviewer can can stay along and yeah, and give, kind of stay along for the ride. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that just needs a lot of practice.
Yeah.
I think your mock interview skills are actually really good. It just like sometimes it's hard to come up with the ideas right on the spot. But you did come up with very good ideas, and you had a really good framework to basically pick one particular idea out of the four that you came up with. So kudos to you, and thanks again.
Thank you.